All right, so hello, my name is Rob Eisner. I'm with Ohio State Cuyahoga County Extension 4-H Program Manager, and I'm with Imani Scruggs this morning.
Yep, and I am a 4-H program coordinator with Cuyahoga County Extension as well.
We were just kind of brainstorming ways to communicate more as a white person and a black person, and we don't have a lot of else in common either. I'm about, well, probably more than twice Imani's age. I don't even know how old you are.
27.
Okay, so I'm 55.
Nice.
And we've probably known each other, 2 years or so. How long have you worked at Extension?
You're killing me right now, Rob. 4 years.
4 years. Holy cow, I'm old. So, but I think we get along. I think we have similar teaching styles and both enjoy being with kids. So we thought in this climate, after George Floyd's murder, in my opinion, at the hands of the police, and kind of the protests that followed, and I think very positive. We're about a little more than a week out from that. And I think after the initial kind of emotional explosion, it was a very positive, productive week, and a lot of positive things are still going on. But just trying to think of a way we can contribute. So we're just going to ask each other questions. We'll shoot for like 5 questions a week, and I'm going to ask Imani 5 things that white people might want to know about black people, and he's going to ask me 5 things black people might want to know about white people. And just so you're sure, we speak for our entire races.
Yeah.
So what I say this morning applies to all white people everywhere. So,
and yeah, same here.
All right. And so Imani's going to go first.
All right. So my first question is, when was the first time, or at least the most salient time, in which you actually thought about what it meant to be white? And just so everyone knows, we haven't asked each other these ahead of time, so you'll have to give us a few seconds to process after we first hear the questions.
Right. Probably middle school. So I grew up in Florida. My neighborhood it's kind of countryside. I wouldn't even call it a neighborhood. It's kind of houses spaced out. It was all white. But there were kind of black communities pocketed around it. And I played a lot of sports, played Little League Baseball. The community basketball court in elementary school was across from the street from our house. So I actually interacted with black people a lot. I gave well, this wouldn't be middle school, this would be high school, but I used to give teammates rides home. We had the only basketball in the community, so kids would come to our house all the time to get the ball. But I think kind of driving my friends home and seeing their communities, and if you picture Southern Florida, kind of beautiful, but economically disparate. Our house wasn't huge either, so it wasn't really through a lens of poverty, but more a lens of how they were segregated. They had their community. Most of my friends outside of sports, didn't interact with, my black friends. And so that's kind of the first time I recognized the difference. And I don't know if that answered your question directly, but.
Mm-hmm. That's the first time you really thought about it. Yeah.
Thought about my own whiteness, I guess. So probably middle school years. Okay. This one actually Imani does know about. I'm going to give you an easy one to start.
You're starting with that one.
I'm going to put
Honestly, I forgot it like
oh, good.
20 minutes after you first asked, so I haven't thought about it since then. So
perfect. So I like playing around with these backgrounds. I've got some showing me in a mansion, and I've got different artwork that I put up. And I started using, I like the abstract works. I was doing Picasso and a lot of the white artists that I learned about my whole life. And I just out of curiosity looked up some black abstract painters and came across some very cool ones. And of course now, I should have written their names down. The names are escaping me. There's a man and a woman. And this one's called March on Washington. But I'm scared to use it because I don't know if it's cultural appropriation. If a black person's, tell you the truth, most people aren't going to recognize or think about who the artist was a lot of times. But if there is somebody who has a appreciation of black art, would that be seen as cultural appropriation, or would it be seen as kind of not flattering, but appreciated that I made an effort to expand my own kind of artistic
Yeah,
knowledge?
no, it's a good question. And the topic of cultural appropriation is interesting because like you can fall a lot of places on the spectrum of how you feel as far as that's concerned. I think a lot of it has to do with intent, at least as far as I'm concerned. So knowing that like you're just trying to highlight their work in a positive way, you're not trying to get any credit for it or make it seem like you're showing it off in kind of a like showboaty way. I think it's totally a positive thing, and why not? I think it's important that you give artists credit. So like it'd be nice if you knew the names so you could like reference them. But at the same time, I don't think any of that is negatively affecting the like Black or African American culture by you showing off their work. I think as long as you're going into it with a honest and like just intent, then it's fine. As far as cultural appropriation is concerned, I struggle with that topic a lot myself. So a lot of people bring up like white people having dreadlocks or like white rappers and stuff as cultural appropriation. And their main point is like you're using the Black image or things that like Black people created, like hip hop, in order to like further your own like life and wealth. And while I can see that that's the case in like some white rappers, like they're appropriating the culture and they're doing it in a negative way. So I know a lot of people got mad at Miley Cyrus when she so she was like real country because of her dad and everything growing up, and like her show was more suburban. Then she started like rapping and doing all of these, people like viewed them as like ratchet acts and all this stuff. And then when she got like a lot of the negative feedback, she tried to like withdraw from that lifestyle. So once she saw the like negative aspects of the like Black identity, she kind of pulled back on all that stuff she was doing. She leaned into it for a while, but like recently she's drawn back. So a lot of the Black community viewed that as cultural appropriation because they're like, oh, now that you're being treated negatively like us, you want to act, you want to go back to the comfort of your own like white world. So I think examples like that speak more to like cultural appropriation than you just trying to like showcase someone's art. So I hope that made sense.
Norman Lewis. His name just popped. No, most of those were Norman Lewis. I don't remember the woman's name.
Okay, so second question. Thoughts first come to mind for you when you see images of Black people looting and rioting online? And then follow-up question, do you think this is the case for most white people?
My first thought is, this was actually a question I had for you too, and it's, I can kind of lead into it. It's how are Black people so patient and so not react that way all the time? My thought is, I would just have that anger in me all the time, and I don't think I could make it as a Black person because of that. So when I see the looting, I kind of, I won't say appreciate it or endorse it, but or even understand it, because I can't understand that perspective, but I don't judge it at all. To me, it's an obvious reaction, and it's, I feel bad for the story. There was a story in Barrio downtown. So kind of in the abstract, I can look at it and not knowing the people or the places, like that's frustration that needs to come out. But then when you look at a particular business, like I read a story of the staff of Barrio, there were a group coming down the street with bats when the kind of the worst day of events in Cleveland. And so they exited out the back door and fled. And about that time, the front windows were crashed and they took, cash register and things looters do. So they just made it out the back door in time. So if you look at it in a particular case, it's kind of, upsetting on a personal level that real people could get hurt. But in the grand scheme of things, I'm surprised it doesn't happen more. I don't think most white people would agree with that perspective, though.
Yeah. That's a good answer. And I kind of figured that. That was very honest, and I didn't know you felt that, for lack of a better term, like liberally about it. But I can see you thinking that way, and I agree. I don't think most white people would understand it. And as far as the like constant sense of anger is concerned, I saw a quote one time. I forget who it's by, but it was, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was to be black and woke in America is to live in like a constant state of anger. And it's true to be like black and really understand the like systematic issues that we face on a daily basis that most people until like very recently were living within, but just either like willfully ignoring or ignorantly ignoring. Yeah, you have to be mad at everything going on because you're like, we're treated so unfairly because of the most like arbitrary and stupid of reasons. And so, yeah, it takes like a lot of restraint for people to hold back. And then you can finally see some of that being like spilled out. And while even as a black person, I'll answer once you ask the specific question you have, how I feel about like the looting and everything. But in my question, I use images of like looting and rioting differently because that's obviously portrayed a lot differently in the media than just the like peaceful protesting is. But for a little while, I was against it because I was like, what's destroying all these businesses really solving? But people can feel our anger now. And I don't think we've ever seen like immediate, and I don't want to call it systemic change yet, because I don't think we've really like dug deep enough into the like core of the system where we've changed on like a foundational level. But we have been seeing changes from it. It took people getting angry and like messing a lot of stuff up and disrupting a lot of things in order for it to happen. So like you, I totally understand it now.
And I also think in today's day and age, it kind of ends quicker because there are cameras everywhere. And so as soon as something happens, not only phone cameras, people film them, but cameras on street posts. And it's really, we're in a surveillance state.
Yeah.
Which sometimes that's not a terrible thing. Sometimes it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that makes incidents like this stop sooner than in the past when it was hard to identify who was doing it.
Yeah. And going off of that, I was at the protest in Cleveland that Saturday that things did get a little ugly. And just looking around, like everyone had masks, like we're in the midst of the pandemic, of course. So everyone had masks on, one for the pandemic, but also it offered people that sense of anonymity and like, I can do whatever now and they're not going to be able to identify me. And I think that emboldened people a lot. And the day of, I thought it was in kind of like a scary way. But looking back on it, like I said before, unfortunately, but it was kind of needed. So yeah, it was a perfect storm or like a perfect combination of things. People being able to like hide their faces and then actually be able to like showcase their anger, as I'm sure they wanted to for a while, without the fear of repercussions.
Right. And then the other thing I think when I watch it is just like, great. This is all we're going to see. This is what the media is going to focus on.
Yeah.
There's thousands of people around town protesting in a positive way. So it's more of a dread of how is this going to be spun as I watch it too. But
yeah, agreed.
So then that was sort of my question. You describe having the anger constantly, but from my perspective, Black people are incredibly calm, incredibly forgiving, incredibly patient. And so is that just, do you feel that's a way you have to be and have to present yourself? Or do you think that Black people are more predisposed to a more peaceful nature?
That is a very interesting question. The predisposed thing gets me a little bit because then I think back to like slavery, and we were trained, for like lack of a better word, to be like docile. Because of course you don't want like angry slaves, so they literally tried to like beat and kill that out of us. So I don't want to say predisposed. I think part of that is a learned behavior out of necessity, like you said, because like, yeah, if we walk around angry all the time, then like you hear the stereotype of both like the angry Black woman and the angry Black man. So like we already have that stereotype, whether or not it's true or based in anything. So we're always having to fight that. Obviously, like if you want to use the obvious example of like police, we have to be a lot calmer around police because like even the smallest uh, provocation, am I using the right word? Like instance of provoking them can be seen in the wrong light by them, and like we can clearly lose our lives over it. So like in the very literal example of around police, like, yes, we do have to be a lot more calm. And like, but some people, and why like your joke was funny earlier about not speaking for all of the, like speaking for all of our races. I know some Black people that I want to say handle a lot better than others, because the Black people I know that are angry, while we are all angry for a good reason, they're able to, and I have one like person in mind, but he's able to like showcase it in a very powerful way, but in a very direct way where he's really just looking for change, but is not afraid to show that like he's mad about all of this and that he wants his anger to inspire like rage sometimes in other people, but like for a good reason and for a good cause. And again, and like it's clearly justified. So yes, to answer your original question, I do think that a lot of Black people are better at restraint because we have to be, and because we know that that not doing so can lead to very like tragic consequences. But then there are some, I'm thinking about some of the kids I work with in like inner city schools that haven't like learned that behavior yet. And it's awful that that's a behavior they need to learn, is to like withdraw themselves, or else they could like find themselves in bad positions. But some of our youth haven't learned how to hold back and like still act out very angrily. And you can see how that negatively affects them in school. So they get like a bad rap, get suspended a lot, and how that can become a spiral. And if they don't learn that behavior, then they can have conflicts in the workforce, with police, anything like that. So yes, it's a learned behavior that's necessary, unfortunately, but not all of our youth or our people learn that, and then some unfortunately suffer the consequences for it down the road. I was fortunate enough to learn it very early on, and practice it.
Thanks, Stu, for pointing out the word predisposed. We've talked before in the past about kind of an evolutionary psychology viewpoint to this, and I don't want to get into it more today, but as we go on, I would like to be able to talk more about kind of the way our brains work. So I want to use the right words when I do it. So
okay, so from a white perspective, why? And this is broad and kind of I don't know if it's sort of an answerable question. It's tough to answer, but why do you think racism still exists in America and worldwide, obviously, but we're focusing on where we live here? So why do you think it's still so prominent in this country?
Take that. All right. So we are going to talk about evolutionary psychology. I think at a base level, racism exists as an evolutionary way to stay safe. So if you're part of a clan or a tribe, anybody that you don't know, anybody that's foreign that comes in is a threat to you until you know them. And so your brain clicks, the threat level. In our country, that's been reinforced socially because, from the dawn of television, the way Blacks usually are portrayed on TV is they were, the old, before your time, but the 70s crime dramas and all that, usually the criminals were Black. They were shown in a negative light. And so kind of through media and just through our own segregation, not having communities where we live together, that's been reinforced that Blacks are different and they're dangerous. And I think that's a large reason our country's had trouble breaking out of it. Also, I don't think we've ever gotten over the Civil War.
What do
That's
you mean by that?
there was never, I just read this yesterday. Former, still General Petraeus was pointing out 8 or 9, like Fort Bragg, Fort Benson, I think he said, of our top military training bases are named for Confederate generals. And so, you know, a failed nation that took up arms against us committed treason against their own country. And yet, after defeating them, we allowed the culture to stay and actually celebrated it.
Yeah.
And over 200 years later, well, not since the Civil War, but you know, we're still removing statues. And every time there's kind of a incident like that's happened, and then there's a round of statue toppling, and then we go on about our lives. But there's still statues out there. There's Stone Mountain in Georgia, which is, you know, the biggest carving in the world. So we don't work very hard to change it. Well, white people don't work hard at all. White people have privilege, they have comfort. And I don't even think it's a conscious effort to keep others out of that. I think it's more just self-preservation. Like, I have what I need. It's hard to empathize. White people don't empathize very well. And again, I'm speaking in generalities, and I think we both are. But
of course.
So because we have what we need, we don't take the time to look at those who don't and try and look at the world through their eyes. In America, I think it's more prevalent because we are the most diverse country in the world. A lot of European countries now have immigrants from, and as we're seeing, they're having their own kind of
they're
struggles
struggling with that. Yeah.
But you would think that we should be over it by now. We've been at this longer than any country in the history of the world. What was your question again?
Why? And you were kind of leading to it there. You just said that we should be over by now. We've been at this longer than any country ever. And my question was like, why does racism still exist?
Yeah.
So like everything you had just spoke about was really true, but like why is it still present? And I know it's not an easy question to answer.
And then the other point that I started to make, where if you're seen as different, you're a threat, that should not exist anymore either, because the past generation, I think, it's been we've all seen a lot of positive contributions from blacks. And so we should stop seeing blacks as a threat, but we don't. So the nature versus nurture part, the nurture part, because we've been at this so long, should be working itself out, but it hasn't. And I don't know why. I think a big thing, and this isn't the grand solution, but I don't think we're going to make progress until white people and black people start spending time together. And white people need to look for opportunities to make themselves, to be a minority somewhere. Visit a black church, drive, to a part of town you normally don't go, and, stop and go in a store. What I've found, because I've spent a lot of time in Cleveland's neighborhoods, because that's where I've worked, for the past almost 7 years, is that people there are amazing. They're wonderful. They're friendly. They go out of their way to make me feel welcome. Anytime I'll stop I used to stop at the Dollar General down the street from Carver and get a bag of chips or whatever. I never had a negative experience. It was always positive. So I think white people need to do that more. We just need to spend time with black people in ways that they're not comfortable with. And really, that's the only way we're going to show growth.
Yeah, no, I think that goes to the whole notion of like, you fear what you don't know. So yeah, if you don't know how these people actually are, and all you know is what you see on the media of them, and it's usually portrayed in a poor way, then that's just how you're going to assume all of whatever population is. So that you're going to assume all black people are like violent or angry or like whatever, if you just know how you see in the media. But if you were to like take some time, it doesn't take a lot of time, but just like take time out of your day to actually spend some time around people that look different than you would realize, like you're saying, we're a lot more alike than we are different.
I remember my son about to graduate from a private high school here in Cleveland. And we played a school in the Akron Canton area that was predominantly black. And my son's in the band. So you've got the black stands of the home team, and then our stands,
Hmm.
and the band plays for the home crowd. And so their band was not very loud or very large, so you couldn't really hear them. So I got my wife and I, we walked around the bleachers and sat in the middle of the black stands, and got some pretty surprised looks. And afterwards, she said she was a little out of her element. It made her, it was just a different experience for her. And
Yeah.
so even though kind of I'm more immersed than most white people are, I have to think I try and look for opportunities for my own family as well. I did a summer camp downtown Cleveland, and I took my kids attended the camp one day with me. So it's hard unless white people look for it. It's hard to put yourself in
Yeah.
a place where you are the minority, and so white people just need to make a conscious effort to start doing it. That would be my advice.
I know, it's good advice.
So it's my turn.
So it's on you. Yeah.
All right. Is this the third one from Do We Care?
Yeah, we're on the third one. Yeah.
Okay.